Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about the weather dominator, weather control. No matter what you call it, geoengineering, weather modification, climate intervention, climate restoration, it's the same thing. The first attempts at weather engineering go back to the mid-1800s with experiments with electrified sand being dropped from hot air balloons into nearby low clouds. This is something that you have seen sprinkled all throughout the news over the past 2 decades, but it really picked up steam during the 2008 Olympics. So when Beijing found out that they were awarded the Olympics, they had already had a plan for controlling the weather because their experiments for controlling the weather go back to 1958. But in China, weather control is run by the Weather Modification Department, which is a division of the Chinese Academy of Meteorological Sciences. And that program employs 32,000 people across China. That's a lot. That's a whole lot of people that are working on weather control.
How many people?
32,000.
That's a whole company.
That's a town.
That's a corporation. The place I work has like 38,000 employees. So that is a Fortune 500 company. That's amazing. Yeah. That means they've devoted quite a few resources to this, whatever you want to call it, this goal, this thing.
Okay, cloud seeding was deemed successful in 1946 because there had been experiments up until then and people claimed they could make it rain, but there was a fellow who sold his services to the mayor of San Diego, and when he was successful, it rained so much that it caused damage to property and they refused to pay him. Moving forward from 46 to 1969, the CIA was conducting cloud seeding in the Gulf of Mexico to push rain clouds away from Cuba and ruin their sugar crops to punish Castro. Yeah, so
that means they've been manipulating the outcome for several years. Not just crops, but literally trying to punish a nation, let's starve it. If you can control the weather, you can starve the people. This can be weaponized very easily. The idea that we can move clouds, the idea on a local level. We talked about in past podcasts where I'm like, hey, bro, I'm seeing rockets take off in the Midwest. I live in the Midwest, Omaha, Nebraska, to be precise. And I'm seeing things that go up. And I'm like, hey, I'm talking to Roscoe. I said, off the record, can you imagine if they're controlling the weather to hide some of these space launches? And he's like, yeah, we had this conversation. But there was a movie that came out in the 90s. Remember, it's called Conspiracy Theory, where they were controlling earthquakes. They were causing intentional earthquakes to kill the president. Yeah, I get it. But can you imagine if they were controlling all this shit just for a minor outcome? Or some people even say that when Katrina hit, that it was about, they had files down there in New Orleans that were coming to the 50-year mark where public can get it. So literally, they say, hey, some people say that was to flood that city, that it just happened on a greater scale than they expected, but it was about destroying certain files. I'm just saying, look how petty the CIA is. We just discussed an actual event where they attempted to essentially starve a nation, or essentially, stop commerce in a nation, an unfriendly nation. So can you imagine if they're using something major to actually do have a minor end? Just you kill 30,000 people, but you only want 2 or 3 people. Or you want to destroy some evidence that can implicate you in some wide mass world shit. So you flood a whole city. It doesn't matter who you kill. This is how petty the government is. And this is, I know you guys might not see the connection, but I'm telling you, I think this is one way of hiding information. This is one way of having us focus on things so much that you don't see the bigger picture. So it's a stretch for most of you, but it's not a stretch if you look at history. But my brother just gave you several dates where the weather has been manipulated, and it was for minor means. It wasn't about crops over here. It was just the opposite. It was about starving people. It was about hurting an unfriendly nation. It was about proving a point, and then you fuck around, flooded people, and cause property damage. There's a history of weather control, and it's something that's not taught to the general masses. It's something you don't learn about in school. You only learn when you start researching things for yourself.
The states of Illinois and New Jersey sued the FAA in 1970 for smoke pollution of the sky. Up until that time, it was very common to see contrails from the exhaust of airplanes as they flew by in the sky. But many people began to take notice how these trails behind the airplane would begin to expand and cover whole sections of the sky at a time. It would block out the sun. So in these northern states, sunshine is critical to just normal social healthy behavior. And when you're seeing that parts of the sky are being blocked out by the sun, people take notice of this, you know, and especially in the Garden State, New Jersey, where people are always outside in their backyards, chilling, grilling, working in their gardens.
Look, vitamin D deficiency is a real thing. These people know that.
Right. But see, the Secretary of Transportation stepped in to see if they could settle it out of court. And so, again, that's the invisible hand of the military-industrial complex stepping in to put the wet blanket on the situation.
Okay, listen to what you're saying. I know you're listening, but our listeners, listen to what my brother's saying. So, you have a lawsuit. Now, you know, who you going to sue? God? You know, we can't control the weather. But then this lawsuit happens, and then the behavior changes. That means that somebody had a hand in that, unnatural hand in that behavior. Because, look, right now, I live in Nebraska. It's cold. What I'm going to do? Sue God? No. But if I could find the right organization that may have something to do with this, and all of a sudden you try to sue them, then the Fed step in like, oh, no, that's not a good idea. But then all of a sudden, shit changes. It's crazy. There's no way in the world that law should have affected the weather if we don't actually have that ability. It's a known thing in several government organizations. It's known. So this is not a stretch. This is not far-fetched. We're not talking about rain dances. And for the record, rain dances don't work because people have been doing those for hundreds of years. Weather manipulation is a real thing.
The airline industry, decades later, agreed to change these burner devices that are in the exhaust systems that will emit fewer carbon particles. And so this black carbon dust from the airplane exhaust, it reduced particulate matter by 70%, resulting in fewer artificial cirrus clouds. These black carbon dust particles are now made of metal nanoparticles. And so the strange thing about this is that, okay, today's a clear day. I'm in the South, and it's beautiful. All of the trees are orange and yellow and red and every shade in between. It's great, and there's no clouds in the sky. I can't believe there are no chemtrails. It's amazing. For some reason, they were told to stand down today, but any other day, you would see them. But today, everything is clear. Not sure why, but I'm loving it. Now, if I were to go up to Omaha right now and go and look up at the sky, the parts that are not overcast, the parts that are exposed where you can see the sun, you'll probably see in that hole in the sky, in those hole in the clouds, these tic-tac-toe crisscross designs. This was on a visit to Omaha in about 2012, maybe. Yeah, it was about 2012 I went up there. About 9 years ago. And me and Duct Tape went to go get some Chinese food. And we were on this road called Saddle Creek. And, he's just walking around like, boo-doo-doo-doo-doo. No big deal. Everything's normal here. But I looked up and I'm like, dude, what the fuck is going on with the sky? Do you not see all this shit? And he was like, oh, that's just normal. Like, he just shrugged it off like, yeah, man, that's how they do around here. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Because I was so astounded by the number of chemtrails in the sky at one time. It was incredible. It looked like a grid, like a straight up grid system. And they were just everywhere, all over the place. I mean, I think at that time I counted about 15 airplanes in the sky, crisscrossing each other, making a grid. And you could see the chemtrails that had been there earlier in the day because they had spread out to become these long clouds. You remember that, man?
It still happens. I got pictures. It's not the chemtrails that bother me because you were already into that shit. So you're like, hey, bro, this ain't normal. I'm like, man, it's just planes. But that's the issue. we had this discussion on the air before. So what do you do when you see a plane in an unnatural airspace and you try to tell somebody that, hey, man, this ain't normal? Like I said, for me, it was normal. I've been seeing that shit for years. But you're like, nah. And when you brought it up, then I'm looking like, nah, the Air Force Base is over there. Where are they going? This not, you start asking these questions. Like I said, you were always into that chemtrail stuff way before me. And in fact, like I said, I'm trying to think the first time they sprayed some, literally they sprayed military employees was like in '54, but I'm trying to find the article right now. So the whole idea that the government doesn't do shit to its own people is not true. The whole idea that somebody might, it could be a private organization. It may not be a federal organization. But my brother's telling you, we saw a shitload of exhaust streams everywhere, crossing each other, going all over the place. So is that normal? I thought it was normal. Until you told me it wasn't, I didn't think about it. It's not normal.
So in 2015, the EPA sued the FAA based on the amount of airplane emissions that were causing these unnatural cirrus clouds. Again, that was shelved, and nobody really heard about anything about the outcome of the case. We only know that it was brought to court, and it died somewhere after that. But clouds created by airplanes trap more than 5,000 times the heat than CO2 does from regular emissions from cars. 5,000 times. Now, couple that with the fact that supertanker cargo ships, 7 of them generate more CO2 than all the cars on the planet. The particulates go into the lower atmosphere and make clouds that expand to at least 500 miles across. So we're talking about the Pacific Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean is full of artificial clouds from supertanker cargo ships. Right. And now there's a bunch of them sitting off the coast of Los Angeles, off the port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and they're just sitting there blowing these smokestacks into the air. More carbon. But yet, meanwhile, in Scotland, in Glasgow, Scotland, last week they had COP26. And COP26 was the climate accord summit that all the nations that agreed to the climate accord went and met at the summit. And so they came up with all these new ideas, and there were all these talks about, carbon credits, which is going to be tied into a social credit system. Just watch. And there was talk about geoengineering. That word was coming up in the media last week. Geoengineering. Weather control. So, okay, let's go back to China for a second. In China, farmers have been licensed to use anti-aircraft guns to shoot these pellets into clouds, into the sky, that are full of these silver iodide flakes and crystals. And supposedly these crystals are shot into the air, and then it attracts moisture, and it creates a cloud, which creates rain. So these dudes have anti-aircraft guns and bazookas, rocket launchers, shooting this stuff into the sky. The crazy thing is, during the 2008 Olympics, there was a downpour. It was raining. But that was their attempt to keep the rain away, because the Olympics was held in July. And that's the rainy season, the monsoon season, Asia. And so they did massive amounts of cloud control, weather control, to keep that rain at bay.
Hey, Roscoe, I found one of the articles.
Go ahead.
It says 1950 through 1953, the U.S. Army conducted Operation LAC, large area coverage, spraying chemicals over 6 cities in the United States and Canada to test dispersal patterns of chemical weapons. Army records state that the chemicals which were sprayed on the city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, included zinc cadmium sulfide, which was not thought to be harmful. That's not a good way to start a conversation. A 1997 study by the U.S. National Research Council found that it was sprayed at the level so low as not to be harmful, but it said that people were normally exposed to higher levels in urban environments. The test whether or not sulfide acid, which is used in making molasses, was harmful as a food additive. The Louisiana State Board of Health Commission study fed Negro prisoners nothing but molasses for 5 weeks. Oh, God. One report states that these persons did not object to submitting themselves to the test because it would not do any good if they said no. It's crazy. But long story short, like it doesn't say what the results are. And it doesn't name the American cities. It named the one Canadian city. But it tells you it was sprayed through 50 through 53 over 6 cities in the United States and Canada.
Wow.
It doesn't say what happened. It doesn't say if the people got sick, not sick. And they even experimented on prisoners. We're trying to tell you we experimented on our own people. The chemicals in the sky, how come, here's my question. So when an airplane takes off, we're in an airplane. I don't see a streamer coming off I'm sitting by the window. I was just on a plane. I don't see nothing coming from the back of it. How far back does this generate? So the whole idea that there's nothing being sprayed is crap. The whole idea that we haven't been trying or attempting or controlling weather, successfully controlling weather for many years. Here's a person that if you just do your research on Nikola Tesla, this guy can control damn near anything. He made shit happen. I'm sure. Remember, he had an earthquake device. Literally, he made buildings shake. So who's to say that when he died, we all know they raided his lab. Who's to say they ain't found some shit? The whole the Philadelphia Project. Which one? Manhattan Project was the A bomb. The Philadelphia Project was the one where they used those generators and they put them on those ships, and the damn ships disappeared and all that shit. Look, what we're saying is that honestly, they can control the weather. So we don't know what degree because you can't find books
to a certain degree. Only to a certain degree.
But we're saying that we're assuming. We don't know how big these are. We don't know how what they can do in the middle of the Pacific to cause a hurricane to hit this area. We don't know. But the thing is, it's hard to find this information. And the idea to think that they wouldn't do it, like I said, this conversation started with us talking about. I'm like, bro, I'm looking at the sky. I got nothing but overcast. But there's 2 little patches where I can look straight through, and the sky on the other side of these clouds is perfectly blue. Like normally, when you have like a thunderstorm or a bad storm, even in the spots where you don't see the clouds, it's super gray. You dig? It's like, okay, it's gray as fuck. Like, oh man. But when I had this overcast in the Midwest where I live, you could see holes in this motherfucker. These clouds go for miles. But when you see these holes in the sky, they were perfectly blue. And I'm like, is this some manufactured shit? Are they doing this to, like I said, because I'm seeing what I believe are rockets or shit being launched in the Midwest. I'm like, are they doing this to block so people can't see this shit? Because I'm the only one driving. I'm taking videos and pictures. I'm sending shit to Roscoe. I'm sending shit to my brother like, hey, bro, I think some of this shit is just manufactured so we can't see what the fuck is going on. That might be silly to y'all. Cool. If you agree, fine. But I'm telling you that I think we have more control of the weather than we realize.
So there's proof that weather warfare is real and has been conducted on enemies of the United States before. And it's probably being used by other countries as well. Well, I mean, for warfare. But there are companies in the United States that have ground-based cloud seeding technology. Ground-based cloud seeding technology. So that means they, like the Chinese, they can launch these silver iodide packets into the air, explode them, and create clouds. So what's strange is that you have to look in between the connections. You have to look in between the events, in between the technology, in the gray area, and you have to put these things together because these places, these companies that have this cloud seeding technology are in areas that have drought, are in areas that also do fracking. You see what I'm saying? So, okay, there's most of the fracking in the United States.
Connect the dots for them.
Most of the drought in the United States tends to be west of the Mississippi.
Midwest, yeah.
And West Coast, California, the Northwest. But here's the thing. So that's where most of the fracking is concentrated in the U.S. If you take a map of all the fracking sites and you overlay that over areas that are currently having problems with drought, and then you overlay that with the areas that also have cloud seeding based platforms, you start to see coincidences and patterns develop. So it starts. Hold that thought, because it starts to like take on a very sinister connotation when you consider somebody is actually creating a drought so that you can pay somebody to do a rain dance for you, metaphorically, and make it rain.
Okay, I want to point out some things. One, check the weather. You know, I was arguing with somebody at work about the whole global warming and all this other shit. I'm saying, look, it was actually hotter back then than it is now, and they didn't agree with me. So I looked at Lincoln, because that's a big city where we are. We go back years. It was way hot. When me and you were kids, they literally kicked us out of school because it was 115. It was 115, and the only kids that we were in a portable in third grade. Remember, we had air conditioning, but the main building didn't. But here's the point that my brother's trying to make to you. There's three things that may be happening. Can you imagine that? So they want to do this oil fracking, right? But that land belongs to South Dakota. So this land belongs to Native Americans. So they know what they got. Right? But guess what? If it's a drought and can't nothing grow there, won't that drive the price of the land down? So you've driven the price of the land down. We buy it for a minimum, but then you pull these minerals out of it. You pull this oil out of it, and you can sell it for a premium. Suppose the only reason they're doing that shit is just to drive down the price. Suppose the reason that these rolling blackouts and all this shit's happening in Cali is so you can charge more for electricity.
But hang on. This same thing you're talking about was done by the U.S. Army of Engineers early in the late 1800s, early 1900s to get Native Americans out of South Dakota. They flooded that land. And when you flood the land, you can't. There's no. You lose all the crops in the area.
It takes years for it to recover.
It takes years for it to recover, and so that means bison and wild game are pushed out of those areas.
It means you can't plant shit either. See, you wash away the topsoil. You got to remember the Midwest does have topsoil. You know, I get it. I get it. South Dakota's a bad.
But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, because if you study the history of the Nile and Egypt was known for its quality of wheat. And this was because of the floods from the Nile. And so it would bring that silt and it would deposit it into the nearby areas. But it took a while for it to do this. So they would have to plant further and further away, and then they would go closer each year to the Nile and plant. But I say this to say,
receded. Yep.
Right. But they flooded those lands to get rid of the wildlife, because the Native Americans relied on the wildlife to, forage and hunt and to gather their and live off of. So now the same thing has happened once again, but for natural resources.
The issue that Ross was saying is the history of this behavior of destroying the value of land. Also, is acquiring it through negative means, whether you foreclose, whether they can't live off it now, whether you fuck up the value of the area. What I'm saying is we're seeing that this is odd. That is it just a coincidence? It's real simple. All you got to do is check a weather records going back 150 years, because we have weather records. We have almanacs. We have poor man's almanacs.
Right. Books, data. Yes,
you have data, but nobody wants to talk about that, because also the way things are now is not the way the things were back then. That's the whole argument you have when we discuss like Egypt, and you had these Arabs trying to tell you that Egyptians were Arab. No, you guys came around
after the party was over. After the party had way been over, they basically moved into an empty house.
Or they rented people off, because when you just
look, man, it's easy to take over a trap house. Okay, you just come in with force and take it.
Or it's easy to drive away peaceful people who don't want to fight. It's easy to run them off, because if you do the research, they actually say the Dogon tribe and the other tribes south of that, they said their history, their verbal history, these people were mannish. They call it mannish. Mannish means crazy. So when them crazy Arabs came, they're like, fuck it, y'all can add this motherfucker. Just build it. But the point I'm trying to make is we're assuming that South Dakota has always had a problem, or has always been this way. But when you check the records, you find out a lot of this shit wasn't that way 50 to 150 years ago. So if the Army Corps of Engineers, they build a dam here and flood the whole valley, that's going to lessen the value of that shit. And what can these people do? They got to move. Unless you want to go blow up a damn dam, which like I said, that shit happens. Let me say, I want to say it correctly. Manipulating the environment is something that's been going on for years. And the idea that we as America, we as a nation, has the ability to affect weather might be realer than you think. And I'm sure people are going to disagree with this. That's fine. But I'm telling you, only a week ago, I saw where I can look through the clouds and I'm seeing perfectly blue skies. So why do we have this severe overcast going on for miles? It does not add up. I'm saying that this was done to disguise something, to hide something. Or maybe, what about our friend Bill Gates? Because you know this, Mr. Burns himself, to control global warming, he proposed blotting out the sun. Now, which movie villain are we talking about? We talking about Mr. Burns? Or are we talking about the motherfucking Terminator, where everything was solar powered, and they blotted out the sun to stop the solar power? Either one of these movie scenarios, this motherfucker actually proposed. Look it up. You don't need me to show you that Bill Gates proposed blotting out the sun to control global warming. That was his idea. So when all you guys sit around, here's my point. What does he know? He has access to information. He thought that was a good idea. He thought he could afford to do that. He thought that could happen. So what information is out there that he has that the average motherfucker walking around paying his mortgage, feeding his dog, don't have? Running his kids to school, the average Joe Schmo, what information does Bill Gates have that me and you don't have? Why are all these motherfuckers trying to rush to the other planets and shit? Now, is it just a circle jerk so you like these billionaires? Or do they know, like, hey, man, we don't fucked up some shit on this motherfucker. Let's get the fuck out of here. Let me take my seed someplace else. Let me get me some alien pussy. What the fuck is going on?
What's going on is planetary control. We say this to you over and over. The people in power, they don't want money. They have more money they can spend. It's not about money. It's about control. Mm-hmm. But see, the type of control that they want, it's hard for you to comprehend. It's hard for the average person to comprehend because here's the deal. The average person has menial, basic concerns. These people think on galactic scales. And so, a person like Bill Gates, they're used to systems analysis and control and distribution. That's what a computer operating system is. So he looks at everything like an operating system. And so he wanted to put an operating system to everybody's body to learn them from the inside out, not the outside in. See, but here's the thing though. It's biological surveillance. This is planetary surveillance, meteorological surveillance and control. Okay. So a person who wants to make an operating system out of a vaccine, out of the weather system, a computer out of the fucking planet. Bill Gates was run out of India, not really because of vaccines, but because these farmers are over there throwing shit fits right now still. And they don't talk about it enough on news. They don't want to cover that shit about him and his bullshit. I'm going to computerize farming and I'm going to computerize agriculture and create these automated systems for farmers and shit.
Recognize a business plan when you see one.
Dude, those guys have already been fucked over with Monsanto. And here comes Captain Mr. Creepy Guy in the sweaters, talking about I'm going to computerize all this bullshit. These motherfuckers don't even have computers. They don't want the cocaine. They don't want the drugs that you selling. All right. They want to feed their families and make a living. But see, what it is, Facebook got involved with it and tried to streamline the whole process with Microsoft and get them to, work all together and get everything, nice and homogenous and, brainwashing people basically. But here's the thing. Okay. So that totally failed in India. All right. And you had the revolts and the riots over that shit. Okay. But see, that came from people who had already been stepped on by Monsanto and all these multinational corporations that want to use them. See, to streamline farming, to computerize farming, is another method of control because you're controlling the food system, food
Right.
production. Hold on a second. I'm going somewhere with this.
No. Oh, I know.
Hold on.
I know that.
Controlling food production, because that's where this conversation is going. Actually, we started with weather control, but this is going into food production as well, because see, weather control is not the be all end all. It's only one facet of it, because farmers are tied to the earth. It's called husbandry for a reason.
Ask yourself this question. First things first, who owns 80% of the farmland in the Midwest? Well, at least in Nebraska. Your boy Billy Gates. So all of a sudden, he can control the food of the world. But if that again, people don't like connecting the dots. What's the biggest thing that you always see? Went back 5 years before COVID. What's happening to all the bees? Now, why are bees so important? That's because Monsanto.
Because they're the glue of the agricultural ecosystem.
Period. If bees die, we die, because bees pollinate everything. These plants have sex, birds and the bees. The bees get the pollen goes to another plant, and you have food everywhere. So if bees disappear, then all of a sudden we have to go to Monsanto. We have to go to Bill Gates and eat this artificial food. Do you understand that if we don't have bees, this one part of the whole ecosystem, we die.
But check it out. Equally as important as bees are carbon dioxide, because photosynthesis does not work without carbon dioxide. And so now they're shutting down pipelines that are coming from Canada into Michigan. They're shutting down other pipelines around the U.S., right? Because they want to be all on this Paris Climate Accord, this COP26 summit they just went to, where they're making all these new agreements about how they want to shut down all these different fertilizer factories and all these places that use carbon. And I'm like, okay, so what they're doing is they're being real hypocritical, because they're not shutting down the private jets that these people flew on to get to this summit. They're not shutting down these super tankers. They're not shutting down like all these airplanes that are creating all this carbon in the air more than people are. They're putting the onus on us. They're blaming us for a system that they created, and they are the biggest polluter of. And it's a complete mind fuck. And they're gaslighting everybody, and people don't fucking realize it. And using climate as a sham, because people are good natured and they want to do right by the climate, because they want a place for their offspring and their descendants to live in.
These people ask you a loaded question. Well, don't you appreciate the troops?
Yes.
Yeah, but
dude, it's pimping though. It's 100% pimping. But check this out. So, dude, they're building this new pipeline, and it's going through South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and Illinois. All right. And this thing is 1,300 miles long. And it's called the Carbon Capture and Sequestration Pipeline. And so this pipeline, what they're doing is, if you've ever seen the second Aliens movie, the one that was directed by James Cameron, when they land on that planet, there's these terraforming machines, huge terraforming machines on the planet when they arrive. That's what these things are. These are terraforming machines. And then, if you remember the recent movie with Tom Cruise and Morgan Freeman, Oblivion, he was sitting on that cliff and he was watching these huge ocean water extraction devices that was sucking up all the ocean water, right? And then if you even go back further to 1996 to the movie The Arrival, which is slept on by a lot of people, Charlie Sheen was an astronomer, and he went to NASA to air his grievances, and he barged in on this seminar that was being given about climate change. Now, but not just climate change, terraforming. And he said, we first raise the temperature on the atmosphere, and then we can manipulate the carbon molecules in the air. He was talking about Mars, but that could easily be overlaid on the planet Earth. What I'm bringing you to is what's happening right now in Iowa. In Des Moines County, Iowa, near Burlington, Iowa, in southeastern Iowa, there's a newspaper. It's called the Hawkeye. Well, last week, I think it was the 10th of November, there was an article. And in this article, the Des Moines County engineer, Brian Carter, he told a board of supervisors that that they are building these machines and we don't have any say on what's going on. He's like, I don't know, really know what they are. I don't know what their purpose is, but we have no control over them and what they're going to do with these things. He said they haven't asked for us to help at all, but they've been using eminent domain to take farmland to cut this pipeline through the middle of America. Now check this crazy shit out. Okay, if this is the case that carbon's a problem, why are you doing this in Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Illinois? Because if all of the carbon, if we're following this right, is being generated in the largest cities in America, why aren't your extractors there? How come your extractors are in the least densely populated areas in the country? So the plan is to extract this from the air, change it into a liquid, and then bury it 1/4 mile under the ground. Dude, you're going to run out of space. This is a continuous fucking thing. So, no, wait. So what's going on is there's an ulterior motive we're not being told. We don't know yet.
We can't figure this shit out because, okay, real simple. What was Arbor Day about?
Planting trees.
Yeah, because to take care of carbon dioxide. Our forefathers, somebody had the foresight, like, okay, we need more trees because it takes care of carbon dioxide, right? So what's the big deal? Why don't we just plant more trees? Why are we doing all this experimental shit? And the thing is, remember, that's the whole big deal. That's what's so important about the rainforest. The rainforest create 80% of our oxygen because those trees suck up the carbon dioxide. But then you got to clear all these damn trees so we can have this fake ass beef from McDonald's. And we know McDonald's don't put beef in their motherfucking burgers no more. It's 20% beef. So here again, hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is people don't want to eat fake meat, but you go to McDonald's and get fake meat all the time. You know, the rules that says it only has to be 20% protein or shit like that. Look, the point I'm making is that if you're worried about the carbon footprint, just plant more trees. Why is the government not planting more trees? It's just that simple. Why? Because they don't care about your well-being. They don't care about fixing the planet. They care about control. They care about making it so fucking bad where you have to depend on the government. And these machines that my brother just told you about, we don't know it. You got certified engineers. You got super intelligent people. You got people blowing the whistle. Yeah, whistle like, hey, man, this is some weird shit, y'all. I don't know what it is. They're trying to wake people up. Look, this started out, we use the term weather dominator because, like I said, we're G.I. Joe fans. But you're missing the point that the shit we grew up on is real. The idea that people are controlling the weather just to control people's behavior is real.
Okay.
You have
I got to butt in and say this, man. Some of the people behind these plans are sinister-ass people. Okay, at this COP26, Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, the same guy that built a museum around an ancient Mithras pagan temple that they found in the UK. Let that sink in for a second. This guy says we might have a agricultural September 11th coming, and we need to protect ourselves against this. Let that sink into your head for a second, what I just said there. All right. So he wants to create a new federal agency that controls the food lines, that controls food production. Listen, we've been doing just fine without this. But see, what they're doing now is they're creating, okay, this is what they're doing. They create the threat, which is a problem, and then they come up with a solution. Because in 1 week, there were explosions along grain elevators in Iowa. There were explosions at sugar silos in a small town in New Orleans of about 400 people. Okay? And then there was arson at a food warehouse in Essex, UK, and it was Kent Foods. It was one of their warehouses, and there was an arson fire there. And so here you have the food chain being attacked on 2 continents simultaneously in 1 week. And then also in Lebanon, on another continent, the grain reserves were attacked. Yeah, near the port of Lebanon in Beirut. In Beirut, man. It's crazy. So
Look,
what's
we're not
happening
being
is
told this.
there are saboteurs in the food supply now that are being sent there the same way those hijackers were trained and put on airplanes, and it had them fly towards the Twin Towers. They're creating this shit, man.
Look, we've seen this shit before. But the thing is, people are so worried about being on social media, they don't give a damn. And they always say the same thing: buy your land, grow your own food. Look, I'm throwing something out there. When people talk freedom, you don't get it. Look, I get it. Kanye is a dickhead, but if you pay attention to his interview on Drink Champs, he dropped some jewels. He said, "Look, I don't have a house. I don't have a home." He said, "Man, one of the people that worked for me went off on me about not having a home." He said, "My home is wherever my FaceTime with my daughter is." He's like, "Look," he said, "I don't need a place. Every city in the world, people, I have a place to stay. I got friends. I got organizations that want whatever I got. I don't." He said, "Man, I'm over here. I ain't got no underwear. You know, Sergio Valenti gave me underwear. Louis Vuitton gave me this." What he's talking about is freedom. Dave Chappelle did something similar. When we watched that Joe Rogan where Kevin Hart talks about how weird Dave Chappelle is, man, they're just in a big ass camper driving around like, "Hey, I need to do a show. I need some cash." And he's like, "Man, I can't." Kevin Hart is trying to sound deep, but he sounds dumb as fuck. He said, "I can't do it. I got two people that depend on me." Dave eliminated that. He said the only people that depend on him is his direct family. And, like, you know, ain't nobody getting over on Dave. Dave shows up, does a show, makes some
But
cash.
yet, meanwhile, Kevin has people making sex tape threats against him that he has to go and sue. These same motherfuckers that was quote unquote close to him.
Yes. The point I'm trying to make is that what happens is we don't recognize freedom anymore. What Kanye was laying down is like, you know, having a house and having a mortgage. He said that's the biggest thing that binds you to shitty jobs. You know, that kind of thing. Whereas he says, "Yeah, I got acres of land," because Noriega asked him. He said, "Yeah, I got land. I got, like, you know, 50, 60 acres here, this, that, and the other." But he's like, "I'm just trying to win the world." He said, "My home is wherever, and when I FaceTime my daughter and we talk, that becomes my home."
Yeah, but see, be careful with that. Be real careful with that, because actually that type of mentality goes well with the gig economy. It goes well with Agenda 21, 2030, okay? Be real fucking careful with that.
Hold it. But this goes back to our last episode, Freedom to Roam, where the government is talking about taxing you just for the mileage on your car and shit. What's happening is the government lost a big revenue stream. If you go to electric cars, people, like I said, we
Gas in the tank.
Last time. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but people don't realize most of your gas price is federal tax, is federal and local tax. So if you go to electric cars, they got to figure out how to tax you. That's all this is about. What I'm simply saying, one of the important things about freedom is coming and going as you please. And again, we touched on it last episode. You know, check it out. But what we're saying is that the idea that suppose you bought some land and you wanted to start your own farm. So you go up to Montana where land is cheap. Well, what if these motherfuckers fuck up the damn weather up there? Next, you know, that land you spent $300,000 for ain't worth $30,000 2 years later because they caused a drought or because they did what they did to Native Americans. Weather domination, as we put it, weather manipulation is a real thing, and it affects the value of land. It affects your ability to feed yourself. And right now, if they shut down this food pipeline, because, you know, black folks, we ain't had one for years. We used to be farmers. You know, I'll talk about black folks because I am a black folks. We are too dependent on the teeth of the white man. And if this shit happens where I can't handle land, I ain't got no place to stay, I'm living in a major city, I'm in a ghetto, I'm in a high-rise apartment, how do you eat? And then you'll be right there, stuck like, "Hey, man, I got to feed my family," making bad decisions, getting vaccines, quitting your job, you know, fucking up your job, not having any freedom. We're telling you that shit can happen. We're telling you that the government has been known to fuck up an area, or some unknown organization will fuck up an area just so you can't. Prime example, let's talk about the Trail of Tears. Again, Native Americans, which many Native Americans are black, you know, let's not forget that, but they were forced to go to Oklahoma where you can't grow shit. Oh, you get there and you find oil on your land. Well, give that land back. No, motherfucker, you made us come here.
Or they get tricked out of the mineral rights.
They get tricked out of the mineral rights.
But listen,
Yeah,
let's bring this back because there's some more here we got to talk about. So,
unfortunately,
40% of the corn, of the world's corn, 40% of it is produced in the Midwest. Just think about that. All right? So that's something to really think about because the food supply and the land that it grows on is under attack from people who want to control the planet and turn it to a planetary computer. Now, at this COP26 summit they had last week, they're throwing around this term. Whenever you hear this term, replace it with neo-feudalism, okay? Or technocracy. That word is zero carbon. On the zero carbon agenda, their focuses are, the areas of focus are road vehicles, railways and trains, flight, shipping, heating and appliances, food and waste, materials, construction, recycling, electricity and fossil fuels, water, and perfect surveillance and law enforcement. Now, Al Gore, Mr. Climate Change himself, this guy was best friends with Kenneth Lay. Kenneth Lay was the guy behind the Enron scandal. We're not going to sit here and explain what Enron was to you. Be an adult and go and look up the Enron scandal. Enron, Enron scandal, Kenneth Lay. Well, his buddy Al Gore is at this climate change summit pushing this climate change nonsense again. And at the same summit, Al Gore is talking about increased domestic surveillance. Increased domestic surveillance so that they can monitor the carbon footprint of every individual and household. So they're telling you,
it's a hustle.
Yes, it's a hustle. It's a straight hustle. Zero carbon is no good. Zero carbon are technocrats and neo-feudalists who want to make you the peasant serfs and them the feudal lords while they fly around in their private jets and you're sitting in some tightly packed commuter train that's always breaking down, or you're in some ride share just barely surviving on your little pittance of money that you make, and you don't own no land and you don't own no property and you don't have guns to fight back. And
you can't afford a car. You ain't got no gas. You can't go nowhere.
That's right.
You can't decide to move.
And
Look,
you have been corralled into these areas like cattle. And you allowed them to do it. You gave them the power. But see,
look.
hold on, because we're going to go real super deep real quick.
No,
these people,
we going there.
These people worship darkness. Okay, you wonder why they want so much control. Is because their true masters are fallen angels. They want you to transcend and to download your consciousness into a computer because they can't leave the planet Earth. They can't go into the afterlife. They can't go and sit down on the Father's couch in the great hereafter. They're not welcome in these places. But you are being tricked into thinking that these people are like you, that you have the same...
You're giving away your power.
That you have the same interests, that you have so much in common. Right. But you don't realize that these people are actually working to keep you here on a prison planet.
They want to take away your birthright. You're the chosen people. You know what I'm saying? When we hear that shit, that's some fucking
Look,
shit.
The whole reason why mainstream science has not addressed consciousness in 400 years is because it would expose the powers that be for who they really are. That quantum computers are just containers for dark deities.
Here's the deal. The deal with Bill Gates, why he wants to make everything an operating system, because he learned that I control them near half the world by creating an operating system for a computer. Well, he wants to put that same shit on everything we do. Food, cars, clothes, everything. So he can control you, and also he can predict what you do. Remember what Steve Copley said? He said the scariest thing to these people are that motherfucker walking around shitting on himself, not giving a fuck. They can't control him. They can't control you with money. They can't control you with drugs. They can't control you with sex. So You have your motivation is completely different. Same thing they said about George Bush. Hey, never trust a man that believes in God. Now, what they're saying is they don't understand your motivation. That person, people have built pyramids because of their faith in. And the reason I don't use the word God, Elohim, is because God is a Greek word. Remember the Greek gods? They weren't divine. They were people that were really good at something. So Elohim, the powerful ones, that's actually our word. So when you recognize that someone who knows Elohim, somebody who knows the powerful ones and knows that they're descended from that, they can do anything. These other people, they don't understand faith and they don't understand your motivation. So they rather control you by, hey man, I'm gonna kill your wife and kids. Shit, if you do that, I'm gonna kill you. Just know that don't give me the motivation to take you out because I will find you. People who know Elohim, people who have an intimate knowledge or intimate relationship with the divine, they can make anything happen. This other motherfucker can't do it. He has to create a monetary system. Look, the reason we have racism is because they looked up to us. They had to control us. The white man had no choice. Dr. Kress explained it like, look, you can be eliminated genetically, physically, emotionally, so you had to create the system. So Bill Gates recognizes that. Elon Musk recognizes that. Who's the other one? Virgin Mobile Cat. They recognize it. Now, I don't know if he's part of it, but these other motherfuckers, they show go back and forth. So the idea that they would spend the time to spend a bunch of money to control the weather, to control you, is not a stretch. The idea that they're launching shit into space where they know you can't go, but it distracts you. The idea that I just got banned from Facebook for 30 days because I posted a picture that I got from Facebook. And so now, oh my God, no, I'm not upset about it. Shit, fuck it, I'm going to read a book. I'm going to do some shit. I actually do stuff in the real world. This virtual world means you're not doing shit in real life. One of the biggest hypocrisies in the world, like when you date somebody, oh, he has potential. She has potential. Potential means you're not doing shit now. Okay. I don't want potential.
Noah built the ark because
he was told to.
No. Because the children of men have become corrupt in their bloodlines. And he knew that he had to separate himself from that because he was told by the Father to do so. And so he did this. And he took a genetic sampling of all the creatures on the earth and he made an ark. So that is something that the darkness, the fallen ones, looked at and saw, okay, this is how we will prevent them from doing this again. We will poison the bloodline so that no more pure men will be born ever again. DuPont poisoned people for decades. And their main product that was used for farming, that got into the well water and the groundwater and poisoned farmers and poisoned crops, and it went up into the air because of condensation and the way clouds are made. And it is estimated that 90% of the population of Earth has these toxins in their bloodstream. And now they want everybody vaccinated. Why is it such a hard push for this vaccination shit? I mean, you would think that, these elitist motherfuckers, being as cold as they are, but like dog eat dog, bitch. Like if you don't get it, then you die. More dead people, the better. No. The more people that are controlled, the better. They are putting the lattice work, the scaffolding into your literal DNA to build upon and build upon. And CDC is talking about maybe there's going to be a fourth and a fifth booster shot. Wait a minute. When have you ever heard anybody getting these many booster shots? Now listen, I realize that COVID-19 is made in the lab and it's unprecedented, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, sure. Okay, good. Great. But the thing is that they want to contaminate the bloodline of mankind. So no more pure men can be born and will exist on earth anymore. And that Christ consciousness will not come back and prevail.
The reason my brother uses Noah's Ark is not an analogy. You must remember, it was to get rid of the Nephilim. It was to get rid of these fallen angels.
Because the father knew it was time to flush the toilet.
Here's the problem. You have dossiers. When you read these stories and see these videos from shit that went on in Afghanistan and what goes on in the Middle East, where there's a, I don't know if it's true, I read the shit, but there was a request by Hillary Clinton to get that Nephilim DNA. That means they were in the Middle East fighting a fucking giant, and Hillary Clinton wanted that Nephilim DNA. Well, why would she want that? Why?
Because, man, she on that chrome, dog. She on that adrenochrome.
Yeah, look, whatever is in this DNA of these giants.
Dude, she gonna get that made to a powder form. She gonna take a fucking needle. I mean, she gonna take a razor and chop that shit up and put it on a mirror. Or she probably gonna like get some fucking female prostitute and like snort that off her titties, man. Dude.
Look, nobody wants to know. That's not my word. That's her word. Like I said, y'all can find that shit online in a lot of places. And even look, we always tell you how many of these Clinton bodyguards, Hillary and Bill, end up dying. Are they dying because these are bad people and they see some shit, or are they dying because they seen some shit? Like, what the fuck is this? You know, like, hey man, we don't need this. Hey, go down to Waco. The only two people in Waco that got killed were former Bill Clinton bodyguards. What the fuck are these Clintons on? What are they seeing that we ain't? Because we know he fucked around with his wife, and we know he was on the Lolita Express. We all know that shit. Why does the former president need to use a plane for a fucking pedophile when you got access to the whole United States Air Force? So, yeah, these motherfuckers saw some shit. You got Hillary Clinton asking for Nephilim DNA. What the fuck? It blows your... So, are they looking for the fallen ones? Are they trying to read? My brother just told you that they worship fallen angels. Are they trying to bring back some shit? Are they trying to find their God? But I know one thing: all of us, we're not cut from that. We're divine. We're of God. They ain't. They're from angels. Angels work for God. Y'all motherfuckers, y'all want the middleman. Y'all love the middleman, my nigga. So, again, the idea that people can control the weather is something that should not be that foreign to you, and you need to worry about. I don't understand why. You know, what's better out there? The idea that Hillary, that our bosses, the people that we voted for, are bad people. That's the problem. That's the shit that fucks with me. So you can be a good person, but once the motherfucker you work for is a bad person, you got this motherfucker in Des Moines County telling you like, hey man, there's some machines that I don't know what these motherfuckers do. I got a master's in this, and I don't recognize none of this shit. And when you ask questions, you disappear, you get in trouble. They're trying to control every aspect of your life. They're trying to create an operating system on the planet so they can control the planet. And all you are is a cog in the machine. This is the Matrix. The deepest shit I saw this week is, I sent you that video. The same black lady that wrote The Matrix wrote Terminator. She's saying Terminator and Matrix is the same planet. It's the same timeline. She broke it down beautifully. And John Connor is Neo's father. Man, she laid it out there. But what you're not getting is that's what Bill Gates wants for the real planet. And the zero carbon footprint is an excuse because, like I said, that's a loaded question. Well, don't you want to control your carbon footprint? Yeah, it's bad. No! Yeah, carbon dioxide goes in the trees. The trees give us the oxygen. What's the big deal? Plant some trees. What's the big fucking deal? They got you scared of shit. So, of course, if you say, look, I get it. Trump is a dick. But Trump backed out of that Paris Accord because he saw this shit coming. Trump is an asshole. He's a bigot. He's a sexist. All that shit. He's a sexist motherfucker. But he saw this shit that he thought. He reckoned there's some things that he saw that he's like, hey, man, this is a bad idea. Let's not do this. So, again, I'm not supporting that nigga. He's a piece of shit. But let's not support Bill Clinton. Let's not support Bill Gates. Let's not support Elon Musk. Let's support ourselves. Go get your land. Grow your crops. Be independent. Find your own groundwater so they don't contaminate that motherfucker. And people keep warning us that, hey, man, food's going to be hard to come up. How do you know this?
Right, but
that's because...
But here's the thing, man. To wrap it up, we started this conversation talking about weather control, weather modification, geoengineering, whatever fancy-ass term you want to apply to it. It's all the same thing, like I said. But it's only one aspect of a control mechanism of a planetary computer. And a big part of that planetary computer is control over food production. Be mindful of all these things. We no longer exist in a time where you can be a passive observer. No, because the coronavirus, all that did was show them how far they could go to bring in a soft martial law and to what limits you could push people before they break. And it was one big laboratory thought experiment. Okay? So look, there it is. We laid it out there for you. All right? It's up to you to use this data and make something meaningful out of it. That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Hey, be mindful. If you break the rules every time there's an emergency, they will create an emergency every time for you to break the rules. Don't give in. Holla back.